Oh shit!
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Ruthless Awakening, a podcast about personal development, mindfulness, breath work, and all these techniques to better ourselves and to advance ourselves and to lift our souls into a higher level of vibration so that we can impact those around us and bless our world and our environment and the people within our fields. But for now, we'll just stick to business, right? We'll just get down to brass tacks, as they say, and talk about something that I think will definitely help many people if they manage to achieve it. And today's topic is being mindful during hardships. Now, this is something that sounds great, but it's not easy to achieve. But if you manage to stay mindful during hardships, you can achieve monumental growth. And this is something that for the longest time in my life, I wasn't doing, especially when I was younger, in my younger years. I wasn't mindful during my hardships. I was just taking it and experiencing it and feeling it to its fullest. And it's not fun. We know that hardships are designed to keep us at our edge. It's hardships. It's called hardship for a reason because it's hard. It's not easy, right? So these hardships are designed to keep you at your edge, or even in some cases beyond your edge, right? It's the situation that's even bigger than you are. And when we are in those situations, it's very difficult to be mindful because we're at our wits' end, and that means that all of these faulty programmings and these lacks of self begin to manifest. And they manifest in explosions of emotions. They manifest in all of these different ways that we don't really control. It just happens. And suddenly you are flooded with rage, or you're flooded with sadness, or you're flooded with all of these lower vibrational feelings. It's hard to be mindful when these things are coming at you at 1,000,000 miles a second. However, being mindful of your reactions during this situation, when you manage to become mindful and stop being so reactionary but become more the observer in the situation, it can help begin to unravel the core essence behind the limited unconscious programming that was installed at a time in your life when you weren't conscious. See, the thing is, we all have faulty programming, because we all weren't conscious since a very young age. In fact, the vast majority of us go through the first 20 somewhat years of our lives not conscious at all. We're simply just following our base genetic programming, and potentially there's some level of awareness, there's some level of consciousness, but you know, if you're listening to this today with me, and you're sitting there and you're like, I'm conscious, I'm actually actively trying to become a better person, I'm monitoring my emotions, that's a different level of consciousness. So even if you were somewhat self-aware in your earlier years, you are primarily still being dominated by these hormonal programs and these genetic programs, even these familiar programs coming from our families and our ancestry, right? So, bear with me. And because these emotions come flooding at us at 1,000,000 miles an hour, you suddenly find yourself raging out, jumping around, screaming like a toddler, but you're like 40, right? This is the trouble with being mindful during your hardships. But I'm here to tell you guys good news, because you can be mindful. It is possible to be mindful during hardships and hard times. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do it. So how do we do this? How do we become mindful during our hardships? Now, the first thing that I always teach people, and I call this the first principle of presence, is breath awareness. I believe that it's highly important to link your awareness or your resting awareness on the breath itself. What this means is that when there's nothing going on, that your mind automatically begins to return back to the breath. And when you do that, a lot of things start happening. When you link your awareness to the breath, and you can do this by simply checking in several times a day. You don't need to actively sit there and concentrate and like, my breath will be linked to my awareness. No, you don't have to do that. All you have to do is maybe 4 or 5 times a day, stop and take a deep, meaningful, mindful breath. I call this checking in. And then what you'll begin to notice is how you breathe throughout the day. You'll notice what it means when you're breathing calmly, and you'll notice what it means when you're stressed out. Your breath physically shifts in your body to different positions. And typically when you're stressed or being overwhelmed by emotions, you'll be breathing shallowly into your chest. However, when you're relaxed and calm, you'll be breathing deep into your belly, slow, meaningful breaths. So simply checking in already gives you insight over your current mental state and emotional state. And that's one thing. That's the first principle. Secondly, understanding that you can use the breath during these peak moments of emotions and let that become your default go-to when you're feeling overwhelmed will help bring you back to presence and help bring you back to mindfulness. So, for example, during this past few months in the transition from that one house to the other house, my funds were at its edge. So I was constantly nervous about money. I was constantly nervous about being able to pay. At some point, there was just no way. I didn't have the means to pay the rent and to get the deposits done in time and the moving and all of these other expenses that were accumulating that you don't really consider when you're moving. So the anxiety and the stress, and there was many nights that I was sitting there like with my heart beating into my throat. And what I learned to do, because a lot of people will tell you start box breathing or start doing these other type of techniques, and that's great. But what really worked for me, and I can't stress this enough, this really worked for me, is I would take a deep, full inhalation all the way to the top and just fill my entire lung with as much air as I possibly can, and then I would hold it for about 20 to 30 seconds. And what that does is it increases the pressure and slightly increases the heart rate for the time that you're holding your breath. And then after about 20 seconds, when there's enough carbon dioxide buildup, you simply exhale and you unload it as if you're breathing through a straw. And then what it does is it once again lowers the blood pressure, and it lowers the heart rate, and it starts unloading carbon dioxide, which is also known as the stress molecule. And eventually, you do this a couple of times, your nervous system will shift into the parasympathetic. And it takes about 2 or 3 of these breaths. That's what I need to do to at least gain presence during this moment of absolute insanity. And then finally, what you need to realize is that you are going to fuck it up at some point. You will not make it. Your emotions will overtake you. You will lose your shit. And that's okay. You need to be mindful of that as well. You need to be mindful that as you're training yourself and your awareness to become mindful, that you will at some point not be mindful. So you need to be mindful that sometimes you won't be. And that's okay. That you are simply a being in the process of evolving into another being consistently. And that's okay. And when you start taking off the need to be mindful immediately and say, well, it's just a process and I'm becoming more mindful every day. And in fact, you can say that as a mantra or an affirmation. Every day I'm just becoming a little bit more mindful. And you might fuck up sometimes, and that's okay. But then eventually you'll trigger yourself back up. You get back on that horse, as they say. And then eventually, one day, you'll find yourself in the midst of chaos, in the midst of hardships, and you'll become completely aware of what's happening inside of you. And then you will have the ability to decide, not under the spells of emotions, but rather a conscious decision on what would be the best course of action. And what happened with me in my case is I had to learn to give over to the universe. I had to go and say, in fact, my mantra was, "Thy will be done." That was my mantra, and it worked perfectly for me. because I had to learn to let go, and I had to learn to surrender to the moment. Now, this doesn't mean that I became small in front of the problem. Rather, it simply meant that I recognized things that were beyond my control and allowed it to be. And that's it. That's what I would like to impart to you guys today. And if you are here listening to this at this point, and you found some value in the words that I'm sharing to you today, give me a like, subscribe to wherever you're hearing this from, and let me know what other topics you'd like me to cover. This has been episode 5 of the Ruthless Awakening, and I want to just thank each and every one of you, conscious human beings or non-human beings, for joining me. Thank you. I'll see you guys in the next one. Whenever that is, I'm not going to go and say, because I don't know. Things might happen. But I'm going to keep on recording this shit, so don't you worry. It'll come. See you guys next time. Stay cool. I created a gratitude breathing thing on my YouTube channel. Check it out. It's awesome. Do it every day, and you'll change your life. Anyway, have a good one, people. Be the best you that you can be. Keep on breathing. See you on the next one. Peace.